Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of the live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let me start off by saying what my experience is with Avatar: The Last Airbender. I have seen all of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I have to say all, but I don't know. I'm sure there's episodes I probably missed during its original airing and stuff, but for the most part, I've seen most of the story. I know the general story, but the thing is, it's been so long. The last time I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, I believe, was when it was originally airing. Like, when the final episode aired originally, that's the last time I saw any Avatar. So, like I said, I remember just about where story beats. I remember the ending of the series. I remember some of the stuff at the beginning, but there's going to be a lot I ended up forgetting. So that's why I want you to know as I'm going into this. So just to kind of put that in perspective for some people. But I thought this was great. The Fire Nation attacking like they did, I don't remember if the animated series ever, the original series ever covered that. Like, I mean, obviously we know it happened, and we saw the aftermath of it. Like, I like how they did it in this show, because I know, like, if I remember correctly, Aang seeing the air temple in like 100 years later, I believe that was all one single episode. I think a whole episode was dedicated to that, if I remember correctly. I don't, because I like I said, I just don't remember a lot of all of the beginning. I remember, obviously, like, what got covered in this episode, I vaguely remember quite a bit, but not everything. I know, for example, but like, the thing I was like, I don't remember the Fire Nation attacking like they did. Like, if we actually got to see that. Obviously, it's a Nickelodeon cartoon. They wouldn't have, obviously, like, the TV show went a lot more brutal with it, because you saw people being burned alive and stuff, and actual dead bodies. Because you saw the aftermath of it, but I don't think we actually saw the attack in the original animated series, but I could be misremembering. But I mean, I'm actually skipping even the opening. I thought was kind of interesting. That was kind of an interesting. It was an Earthbender who was basically a spy to infiltrate to find out what the Fire Nation was up to, and he sent word to the Earth Kingdom, like, hey, the Fire Nation is going to attack, but it was all a ploy, so that everyone's so focused building up and blocking, the water tribe and the Earth Kingdom, and even the Airbenders are going to be gathering for the purpose of defending the Earth Kingdom, but that's not the real target. All your focus is going to be on here. You're going to be building up your defenses here, not seeing like what we're doing over here, and that's attacking and wiping out the Airbenders. That is the interesting and complex nature of knowing what the Avatar cycle is. It is on a very specific cycle of this is how it's going to roll, and who the next person in line is going to be, and what tribe or group or nation or kingdom they're going to be from. And so the Fire Lord Saizon, I did not remember that Fire Lord's name at all. Was it Saizon? Is that his name? I'm blanking. Once again, I'm sorry. I'm probably seem like a bad Avatar fan, but like I said, my memory is god awful, so I didn't remember him that well. But yeah, he launches an attack. I mean, burns that Earthbender alive after explaining everything and what they're doing, and they proceed to attack the air temple. Especially when so many, he picked two perfect times. One, because everyone was gathering their forces to protect the Earth Kingdom. All the air nomads had gathered together at the temple and made it easy to wipe them all out at once. So I'm sure that was also part of the plan. But also, as the Fire Lord brings up in this episode at the beginning too, any other day they might have fended better, but this is the comet. They're feeding off the comet. And I was like, I didn't remember that. I know the story relevance to that, but I didn't remember like that. Because the moment the comet was happening, I was like, oh yeah, they're like souped up during the comet. But I just didn't remember that at all. Maybe they never focused on it too much at the beginning of the series. Once again, I remember the significance of that in the grand scheme of things, but I don't remember them really leaning into, like, I don't, like, maybe that's kind of like what they did with One Piece, where they're setting up stuff that, like, hey, it seems like something here, but it becomes super important, like, present day and with the future of this story, about, like, knowing that comet, like, heavily boosts their power, so it is something to be weary about. So I just don't remember them making a big point of it in the beginning of the series, but once again, I haven't seen it so long, and maybe they did, and I, like I said, just don't remember it. Especially between like the Fire Nation planning its attack, and we get introduced to Aang, and his relationship with Gyatso, and the the thesis statement that is this show about the harsh responsibility that Aang has on his shoulder, and Gyatso wants Aang. It's like, I want Aang to figure himself out before we thrust this responsibility. He's a 12-year-old kid. We're putting the weight of the Avatar on him. None of his predecessors, none of the previous avatars were ever as young as him when they took up the mantle. This is a lot for... I mean, Aang's already proven himself to have picked up and become a master of airbending faster than anyone. Like, he's been the youngest to acquire mastery. I did not remember that being what the arrows represented, because obviously there are some people who didn't have them. I guess in my head, I attributed that to being like an air bender thing. I didn't remember it being like, no, that means you have mastery over. I didn't realize like that's the symbolism. I thought it was just a general airbender symbolism. I didn't realize it had that significance to it. It's that, like I said, that conversation of like, this is a young hero. Like, yeah, you have your young heroes, but it's still, they really like, this show always did a good job of really focusing and hammering home. He's a kid. He's going to be like, he's very inexperienced. It's a lot for an adult to handle. You're asking a 12-year-old kid to save the world who's not ready for that responsibility. He's like, I didn't ask for this power. I don't want this power. And Gyatso's like, because you don't want the power, that's what's going to make you a great avatar. You're not going to be so power hungry. But it's still the thing of he just wanted to have fun, and even Gyatso is telling him like, you're going to have to leave, because the others are like, the other council is like, yes, it sucks, but he needs to be prepared. But with the Fire Nation making the moves they are doing, he needs to be shipped away so he can do his training to learn the other bending styles as the avatar. And it's a lot, because for Aang it means leaving behind everything he knows, his home, his friend, and Gyatso telling him, it's like, no matter what, I am your friend, and I always will be your friend. And Aang just needed time on his own, and so he left at the perfect... Because that's the thing. It's the real sad reality when you think about it. It's like, if Aang had not left, he probably would have died. He isn't trained enough. He's still inexperienced. Even with we haven't given it the name yet, but the Avatar state. He enters it twice in this episode, completely and utterly by accident, because obviously his emotions got flared up, and it's also a defense mechanism. It's not something he can control, so there's no guarantee he would have been able to summon it during that fight, especially considering the Fire Nation was at its peak power, because the comet's adding more fuel to their flames. So Aang would have died then and there. So him being away as he was a blessing in disguise. But it's still the harsh reality of everything. It ain't like just like, 100 years pass and everyone is gone. They were all murdered. It wasn't even. We could legitimately use the word genocide. There was a genocide of the airbenders, the air nomads, and it's just, you weren't there with all the people you care about, so that's another like stab in the heart with it all. So, and I love that obviously they give you no notion of it, because obviously if you know Avatar, because that's why I'm really curious how many people are watching this show who've never seen the original. Like, if animation isn't your thing, then maybe this is your first time seeing this series, because I know from some people, like, animation is just not their thing, so they can connect more with live action than they can animation. But then, it might just also be like, some people are like, oh, that's an older cartoon, because that cartoon is like 16 to 19 years old, because it started 2005. So some people might not have ever gone back, so it might be that window period of, you watched it when it was around, or maybe you're one of those people who decided to go back, but not everyone does. So I'm going on this whole diatribe, but that's why I'm like, it's so interesting, because like, if you didn't know the 100 time skip, you wouldn't know it. You'd think like, it's the same era, because all you do is cut to Katara practicing her water bending. And I thought that was so interesting. Like, yeah, I was like, they don't give you any indication. Of course they wouldn't, of how much time has passed. But and obviously we get it, our peek into the water tribe, specifically the southern Northern tribe, and Katara trying to bend, and her relationship with Sokka. He's the man of the house, and he's not responsible just for his own family, but for everyone in the water tribe, because at the end of the day, like, our dad left us that responsibility. And I remember this being a conversation. It's kind of an outside the show thing, but it also is that conversation about the original show versus this. I was super young, so I think I remember some of the sexism that Sokka had, that it is part of his growth of him kind of putting like, oh, like there are gender roles for a reason. Men are supposed to do this, women are supposed to do that. He's not as much putting his sister in that role in this because they pulled back and kind of got rid of that. It's more so about, and I think this was part of his character in the show too, but I think the in this series they're going to try and lean into it more. His responsibilities of feeling like, I'm the older sibling. I've got to step into. I've had to age up quicker, as Katara puts it. Her brother was put into the role of like kind of taking charge when he was 13. So it's a lot for him to handle. So he had to grow up quickly. A lot of people did, with everything being the way that things are. And obviously he doesn't want Katara bending because it's like because the notion is the next person in line. They don't really talk about it, but the reason why there's no other waterbenders around is because, at least in the southern tribe, it's because the next avatar in the cycle would be a waterbender. Which is a very important key detail in some capacities if you know the original series of how that plays out and stuff like that in a grand scheme of things. But that's an important thing to note. So that's why they were trying to wipe out do what they did with the airbenders and make sure that there were, well, it's also like, I'm sure you want to quell anyone that could be your natural enemy, who would be the natural enemy to a firebender but a waterbender. So you want to squash any like people being able to fight you, but also the next avatar, it's more so that, but it also is less competition you have to go up against. So there's that angle to it. And so Sokka's just trying to protect her. It's like, right, it's my responsibility to make sure you're okay. It's, you're like not only the village, but you're also my responsibility as your brother. Like, no one else is here. Mom's not here. Dad's not here. I am here. So listen to me for once, like, and don't bend, because I don't want you, because it seems like, once again, a detail I don't remember. It feels like it, based on what they were kind of getting at with Katara's talking about their mom a little bit, their mom was a waterbender that the Fire Nation killed. And I'm sure if that's the case, I'm sure that's why it'd even be more of a sore spot for Sokka. It's like, we already lost mom because of that. I don't want to lose you too because of that. That's what it seems like, at the very least. Like I said, I don't remember if that ended up being the case. I believe bending is more likely if a family member can bend. You're more likely to bend, I believe. I don't think it's 100% genetic. I don't remember if the show ever really got into that. I mean, you're definitely more likely to be a bender, but I don't know if they ever really correlated, like, oh, you have to have someone in your family lineage who was a bender for you to be a bender. Like I said, I don't remember the show getting into the nitty gritty of that. It probably did. I just don't remember. Either way, Sokka and Katara end up stumbling across Aang, and obviously they're like, whoa, he's, I think it was was that their actual grandmother, or is she just an older woman in the village? I think it's their actual grandmother, the woman that was saying like, oh, he's the airbender, he's the last of them, also ends up being the one that points out that Aang's the avatar. So I thought that was interesting because it's like, and obviously Sokka being the very suspicious person. Like, I believe that's keeping in line with the original show too, because I believe Sokka was like very suspicious of Aang in the beginning. Even how the Fire Nation stumbled across them, I believe plays out differently. And someone do correct me if like the ship they went to, if I remember correctly, what popped all this off was, I believe it might have been Aang and Katara, maybe it was just Aang. I think they were at the ship and they activated like a flare or something, and that attracted the Fire Nation. I think they were I think in the same way they were in the general area, but it drew even more attention to the Water Tribe, Southern Water Tribe, I believe. Because I think I vaguely remember Aang catching a lot of flack for drawing the Fire Nation towards them. Not even just the avatar of it all, just because. But the whole light situation of being, like, seeing the light, assuming it's the avatar, like, I don't remember that being a thing. I believe it was the ship going off that ended up drawing them, but it didn't happen in the show because they were drawn in this version of the show because they were drawn by the avatar light when Aang came out of the ice. Which we also get introduced to kind of our main baddie for a good chunk of the show is Zuko, the prince who is on his mission of redemption. And I love, obviously, our introduction to Iroh, and Iroh keeping the Iroh energy of being like, Iroh's like one of the best dudes in this series because he's just like he's not as like war hungry as like the current Fire Lord, um, Ozu. Like he's not as like as ready to go to battle. He's a skilled warrior, but he's very like laissez-faire. He's got a very like laid back attitude, and he's it comes from wisdom, and he's trying to impart a lot of that to Zuko, but Zuko's not going to listen because Zuko is so consumed with, I need to prove myself because it's the only way I'm going to go back home. I even love that conversation where Iroh's like, I don't want you to get your hopes up. Even later on saying like, okay, say you do defeat the Avatar and you do return home, your return will be unexpected. But Zuko's like, no, you're wrong. But it's like, he's basically saying your father sent you on a mission he knew you could never complete. It was always, he never expected you to do this. But Zuko's like, no. Dad gave me this mission as a chance to redeem myself, to prove myself, and I'm going to do it. Because Zuko, and obviously it's like, you're his son. You feel like you have a lot to prove, not only to him, but to yourself. I'm also, speaking on Zuko, really quickly, maybe they'll touch on this more. I'm curious, will they cover any of the stuff with his mom? I've never read the comics, but I know there are comics associated with Avatar: The Last Airbender that touch more on subjects like that the original series never covered too much. So I'm curious if that's something the live action will approach at all. But he has a lot to prove, and as we see in the picture, we find out he has a sister, which I didn't remember this, but I guess she doesn't really pop up until the second book or second season. I actually didn't remember it's Azula. Like, I didn't remember when I guess in my head I thought she popped up in the first season. Maybe she did, and maybe she just wasn't that big of a character. And then in the second season, she steps into the role that she is. So. Yeah, he has a lot to prove to his father, but also to himself. But by proving it to himself, he's proving it to his father. Like, hey, I'm going to prove that I'm the heir. We even find out Iroh abstained himself from the throne because he's like, yeah, the throne's not everything. But for Zuko, it's like, yeah, it might not have been for you, but for me, it is. It represents everything because it's like, if I can prove myself. The sad thing is, Zuko just wants his father's love. And that's the sad thing. It's like, I was never good enough in my father's eye, and if I can do this, if I can redeem myself, prove myself to be the rightful heir, maybe my father will love me, and maybe I can be viewed as a success and not the failure so many people see me as. Even his men were like, couldn't you take us to like a place that's haha? He's like, yeah, but this is about redemption for all of us, because it wasn't just Zuko sent out. It's like, you guys are here with me too. They won't say anything because regardless of it all, he's still a prince, and the last thing you want to do is piss Zuko off because got deep-seated anger issues. But it's also like, this is about our glory that we can get, but that's all Zuko is focused on. That's all he sees when it comes to the Avatar. Now that he's able to see that it is Aang and has a visible face and person to associate with this elusive being that is the Avatar, But obviously, like, they show up at the Water Tribe, and it leads to a whole situation of, we will burn down the Southern Water Tribe if you do not hand over the Avatar. And Sokka was going to do it until Katara stopped him, because he even tried to like blame Aang. It's like, oh, he's the Avatar. He was hiding that from us. He ran away like a coward. It's like, right. He was a kid. Like, I mean, him and Sokka, there's a lot of parallels. Once again, like, you both had to grow up so quickly because of a lot of responsibility was thrust on you, and Aang didn't know things were going to play out that way. It's just a sad turn of events, which there's a silver lining to it. That is like, if it wasn't for that silver lining, if it wasn't for those unfortunate situations, he would most likely be dead. So it's almost that sad thing of everything does happen for a reason, But Katara's words got through to him because it's like, right, I get it. There are more things about being a leader than just fishing. And yes, food and shelter is important, but what's also important is hope. This world has been stripped of hope for so long, and he's the Avatar. He represents hope for everyone. Because they even talked about the fact is none of the groups communicate. The Water Tribe only communicates with the Water Tribe. The Earth Kingdom keeps to itself. There's no more Airbenders, and the Fire Nations rule with an iron fist. You submit to their rule. So it's just, there's a lot of like, everyone's so disconnected, and the Avatar could be the thing that brings everyone together. So Sokka challenges Zuko to a fight, and obviously he wasn't going to win that. But Aang turns himself over. It's like, leave them alone and I'll go with you. And for him, it's like, no one's ever fought for me before like that, so thank you. And even I don't remember, like, I can't remember if Aang ever got caught early on the show like this. Maybe he did, I'm just not remembering. But even him and Iroh having that conversation, because Iroh gave his perspective on the whole Fire Nation thing, that the Fire Nation, it's like, why did this war start? It's like, well, the Fire Nation believed that probably the only way there would ever truly be peace is under the rule of one particular nation. And it's like, it's our time to rise up. And, you know, it's ego. But even Iroh said, like, that's kind of part of our nature as a Fire Nation, that we use our fire to kind of consume everything. But it's like, right, under the Fire Nation's rule, there could really be peace, and there won't be peace until the Avatar is captured, you know. And even Aang is like, is that what you believe? Iroh didn't say anything, but he doesn't believe in that. That's that very reason is why has no interest in the throne, why he's never had interest in the throne. Well, he might have at one point in time. I don't fully remember all of Iroh's past, so maybe there was a time he was just like Ozu and wanted the was it Ozu or Ozai? The current Fire Lord, Zuko's and Azula's dad. I can't remember now. Is it Ozai or it's Fire Lord Ozai, right? I might have been saying it wrong earlier too. Once again, forgive me for my stupidity. But I thought that was such a neat conversation, kind of showcasing once again who Iroh is, and he even like, oh, I can't wait for more conversation. I'll bring you some jasmine tea. It's just showing you what kind of guy Iroh is. It's like, good guy Uncle Iroh. He's so good. He's just such a good natured dude. Which also, just when I think about it, also just makes me want to think, like, thinking about Iroh, I'm thinking about, like, oh, R.I.P. Mako. He's the original voice actor for Iroh. Obviously, it's been a very long time ago since he passed, but he was the original voice actor for Iroh. You might know him, but, like, if you've ever seen Samurai Jack, he was the original voice for Aku. I want to say it was, like, maybe 2006, 2007 when he passed. I know he was also... I believe he was Splinter in one of like the CG animated Ninja Turtle movies that came out around that time, like 2007. Once again, it's just like thinking about Iroh got me thinking about Mako. I can't remember his actual name. I don't know if like Mako was like a stage name. I can't remember, but I believe that was his name. But I remember around the time he passed, and just thinking about Uncle Iroh just kind of got me thinking about him, because once again, he voiced Iroh in the original Avatar, the last Airbender series. Either way, kind of moving that tangent aside, I also thought was kind of an interesting bit was the whole Appa thing. I thought that was so interesting because if I remember correctly from the original series, they made a little bit of that, because it seems like it's something they're doing away with in general. But like, you have to say like, don't you have to say like yip yip to get Appa to move? I also did not remember there being other Sky Bisons. I guess in my head, because obviously, well, there wouldn't be any left because Appa. I don't know. I don't remember if it's like Appa's like the last ones too, or I just didn't remember there being other Sky Bisons. I thought like Appa was very rare in that regard, but it's also like he's probably in the same boat as Aang. There's no more Sky Bisons. There's only him. They're probably a very extinct species, or maybe they came up later on in the series. Once again, I say it every time. I'm sorry, I don't remember a lot, but. What my point was, if I remember correctly, there was a whole bit where Sokka and Katara are trying to use Appa, but they can't get him to go, and they're like, "What did Aang say? What did that kid say? Yip yip," and he takes off. I think that was a bit, but they not only did they not do that with Katara and Sokka, they didn't even do it with Aang. Because I think they're getting rid of that. They're just like not including that. It's a comedic bit, but I guess they figured like we don't really need to adapt that in particular. So I guess they removed that in general. Because I don't think that really becomes prevalent. I think other than that Katara and Sokka bit, I don't think it ever really becomes 100% necessary. I don't think there's ever any other bits about that. Maybe there were. But yeah, Aang escapes from Zuko, but Zuko is driven by his passion of like, I need to, my mission of capturing the Avatar. But luckily, Katara and Sokka come to the rescue. I even love that it's kind of a neat little thing that Sokka keeps referring to him as kid, and Aang's like, Sokka! It's like, I can call you by your name, but you won't, like, he never calls Aang by his name in the entire episode, if I remember correctly, which I think is an interesting little detail. I don't think he ever calls him Aang. He's just like, yeah, that weird kid. Yeah, let's go rescue that weird kid. Hey, kid, you know? even though he's not that much older than Aang. But obviously Zuko tried to attack again, but Katara ended up saving the day. She water bended because her and Aang had the whole conversation about applying what he knows about bending, and she was able to apply it and do it herself. So because for her, she wants to do more. It's like by being a bender, I can be a fighter, I can be a warrior, and that means I could do a lot more good in the grand scheme of things. So, but now that they've rescued Aang, the fire, and now they know that the Avatar is alive and well, they're never going to stop looking for Aang. So, what are we going to do next? And I was like, are they going to go to the Air Temple? And they did. And because, like I said at the beginning, I believe that was a full episode dedicated to them because I think it flashed back more with the Air Temple stuff. At that time, it was kind of like a present day, kind of was almost like Lost. Part of the episode is present day, and part of the episode's in the past, if I remember correctly. I won't lie to you, that sequence actually made me tear up. I don't know whether that's just no one else probably had that feeling. Maybe during the original series, maybe you didn't feel it as much with the live action, but it made me tear up because I think just personal stuff in my stuff in my personal life happened recently, and I'm a very emotional person, and so I think I was already in kind of like a vulnerable position. Seeing that just made me like tears rolling down my face, sad, especially the Gyatso stuff, and it's just like that torment in the actor who plays Aang's face of just like that feeling of like sadness and anger of like you're seeing your friend, his dead body. Once again, those feelings of I wasn't here. Maybe if I was here, I could have done something different. And it's like because I wasn't here, because I ran away from my responsibilities, feel like you just wanted some time away. You weren't going to run away. I think in the original animated series he was like running away, wasn't he? I don't remember. But it's just like he was planning on getting away for a little bit. He wasn't going to run away, but it still feels like, no, I ran away. I wasn't here when they needed me. Not only as an airbender, but as the Avatar. And my friend is gone. And just in that moment, he enters the Avatar state and starts destroying everything. It's just like that sadness. And then remember Gyatso saying like, right, I know how much of a heavy burden this is, but I know you can handle it. And saying that no matter what, you're a good person. I know you will never be consumed by power. And the fact is that you are my friend. You always, and that's where I start really tearing up. I was like, damn, dude. And in that moment, Aang's also hearing Katara calling his name and just thinking about his friend. He just finally calms down. And it's just, it goes back to that point of it's a lot for any person to handle, an adult, let alone handling all that. But we're talking about the 12-year-old kid where it's just like, just yesterday, I was home. Everything was fine. And in one moment where it just feels like, oh, seconds pass. It's been 100 years and everything and everyone I've ever known is gone. For the most part. So we'll leave it at that. But Aang is set on his mission of he's going to do, like he's not going to let those deaths be in vain. He's going to see this through and learn all the other bending styles he's supposed to and master them. And ultimately, it's that point of like that parallel between the Avatar and Zuko being kind of two sides of the same coin, both driven by pain and these expectations they have of themselves and others have of them. And it's just like the Aang's voiceover happening at the same time we're cutting back to Zuko, where it's just like once you have something to kind of fight for, like you're never going to like let go. That's always going to be like Aang is the motivation, is the fuel to his fire. So I thought that was just so neat. Just like leaning into that. Because if I remember correctly, I think supposedly we're probably going to get like a lot more Zuko. Like they are going to split the time between what Zuko's up to. Because every once in a while you cut back to Zuko, but like Zuko wouldn't like the biggest focus across most of the show. Like obviously his story is important, but I think they're going to do that a lot more in this. Focus on Zuko's story being like more prevalent in this season of the live action, just to parallel it that much more with Aang's, I think. Because, like I said, they are two sides of the same coin. There is a lot of similarities between them. The real thing it was the conversation about what loss can do for you. Because Katara is saying loss can make you stronger. That's when you find out how strong you are, and it can fuel your motivations. How it fuels Aang and what he's lost. Obviously, we're only touching on his honor, but there's been a lot more for Zuko's that he's lost. So. There was also one little detail too. I want to circle back to this because I just remembered this. Gyatso was talking about the previous Airbender avatar before Aang being a woman, and I was like, was that the thing? Or I wonder, did they gender bend that character, or is that the case? I don't want to go into spoilers, but there's something in relation to a previous Airbender avatar, and it's something that comes up in the final book. If you know what like I said, I'm dancing around it. There's a conversation in relation to one of the previous Airbender avatars. I thought that person in that particular very important conversation about how you should handle a certain situation in the final season of the show, that conversation, I thought that was in correlation and in connection with the previous Airbender avatar before Aang. I thought it revolved around them, but maybe it was just a previous avatar. So that's why I'm like, I don't remember, because I remember that person being a guy, if I remember correctly. So I'm trying to wondering, like, did they gender bend that character, or are those two separate characters? That's the thing. Once again, that's just a me thing, because I'm like, does it matter? No, but that's why I was trying to wonder. I'm like, am I thinking the same character, or is it two different characters? Probably it's two different characters, but either way, that was, like I said, I thought it was kind of a great way to start things off. Like I said, it very much like like I brought up before, like, because it's been so long, it's very much like the One Piece thing of, like, I have not seen, first and foremost, any One Piece in a very long time, but also I hadn't seen early One Piece in a very long time. So it's almost, watching the live action was almost like watching it for the first time again. So I'm kind of getting that feeling vibe. So I'm excited to continue down this journey to see where the rest of the season takes us, in particular what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.